So here we are.
Here we are. Roaming on into the theater, you might say.
So nothing's changed for me, but any big life events for you, Swam?
As you can see, I turned off my purple lip gloss effect.
On the Zoom call.
On the Zoom call that we usually tape in. Also procreated a living human being. Not me personally, though. I think that's it. Yeah. As of this taping, Sonny, who I've mentioned in other outlets so people may know already, is my son. It's with a U, not an O. Is
Shunny?
2 weeks old in about 9 hours.
Yeah.
That's how far in we are.
But I just want to tell the fans that we've been
banking.
Tom?
You hear that, Tom? 9 hours. I'm back.
9 hours. Yeah,
I'm on the saddle.
Don't bring Tom into this. All children are different.
All children are different, and we have a tremendous amount of support. We have like multiple grandparents by us, and that's why I can do this.
But I want to let people know. I mean, first off,
still very tight.
We banked it, so Swaim's going to be here, but things may be out of time. Like there may be a frame rate down the ways where it sounds like you don't have a child, and that's fine. But in any case, I wanted to bring up this just because this is a special episode, because it's hilarious to me. I woke up like a week or two ago to a text from you, and you're like, right before the baby was about to be hatched, you were like, you want to cover Rosemary's baby?
I'm feeling it, dude. Also, I'll have you know, these are some of the good omens surrounding my son. He was born, if people need a handy way to remember, 8 hours to the minute after the official time of death of David Lynch. So it's, by the way, the most viral social media post I've ever posted was my prayer to the cosmos, David Lynch, please to inhabit my baby's body. Yeah.
Well,
so hopefully the collective will of everyone made my kid a weird guy.
Sonny's first words sound like a 1920s baseball announcer. You got it. Quinoa and a swing and a miss.
He's got it. Rest in power. Had to say it on mic. God, what a legend. And of course, I mean Roman Polanski. That bastard's dead, right?
Oh, baby.
No.
So I asked him right before this, I was like, when you chose this, did you know it was Polanski?
No.
And he was like, I did not.
Yes, I am the type of passive edgelord who will not show my son like things that are out of age appropriateness once he's cognizant. But yes, as a shithead comedy writer, it's funny to me that he's a newborn. So right now I'm holding him while I watch Rosemary's Baby, The Babadook, Stepdad, any movie about grossly abusing, or the kid turns out to be evil, you regret having the kid, this was a big mistake. Stuff like that is funny to me to watch with him.
You're speedrunning a sociopath,
So
dude.
I looked up, like, what's just the one where the pregnancy is horrific and the baby's evil?
Boss Baby.
And I was like, Rosemary's Baby, and I'm like, I've heard of that as like a formidable, notable film. Good, so may as well. Good to cover. My bit continues. It immediately starts up and they're like, Roman Polanski presents. And I'm like, well, that's too dark. I didn't mean for that. I didn't know that. Or I think it might have been The Hand That Rocks the Cradle is the one I was confusing.
Yeah. There's been a few of those. I mean, honestly.
The Good Seed.
Honestly, the 60s, 70s, that's par for the course, man. There was a lot of anxiety about child rearing during that time. You know,
we used to cover Harlan Ellison stories on this network because we do what we want. He has a story that has not aged well about a woman who has so many abortions that one night she like hears a voice and follows it down into the sewers, and it's all of her aborted fetuses have like formed a little society and enslave her for vengeance for her moral turpitude of having abortions.
Yeah.
Weird turn. The end of the twist of that story is that that's what happened to the people on Roanoke Island. I can't explain it further without reading the story, but
I've been to Roanoke.
Really?
It's true what they say. A bunch of witches.
They left a thing that just says like Croatoa, which was not a word. They're like, hey, here's where we went, Croatoa. And they're like, what the fuck does that mean?
What the fuck?
Look it up, people. Roanoke, famous mystery.
The Appalachians. I mean, there's just so much space in America. There's just, I mean, Roman Polanski, Manson family. Like we're talking about. There's a lot of people in America.
Which, thank you for bringing us back to. I gotta say, really glad we covered this. Really, really interesting to me. you have to make the moral decision out there, listener, of whether you watch Roman Polanski movies. He's absolutely a Bryan Singer, full on, definitely did it, is a rapist. On the run from the law. So yeah.
Yeah.
So I get
He's
that.
a fugitive.
But forget it, Jake. It's Rosemary's Baby. We already watched it. And I got to say, my main takeaway that I want to throw at Abe just to kick the convo off is, wow, Hereditary owes this movie everything in a way that I didn't know Hereditary. I was like, oh, that makes sense why, in my mind, maybe a hot take, it always seemed like Ari Aster only had one really good idea. And then I was like, what happened to you, man?
No, man.
And it's like, oh, this was essentially Rosemary's Baby with some modern zhuzhing up. That makes sense.
This was the 70s. Like, this movie is taught as a seminal. It's in the Criterion Collection.
It's so creepy. It's really good.
It's the Criterion Collection is MO is culturally relevant. So however you feel about Polanski, it's in that. I mean, he was getting awards in the 2010s, like every decade we have like a Roman Polanski, like he's not in prison still, like kind of deal.
right.
And he's been to prison multiple times for the events that occurred in 1977 at apparently, I didn't know until I did research for this, Jack Nicholson's house.
Whoa.
Took shooting model photos of a young girl, 13, and then drugged and raped her.
And Jack Nicholson was implicated, or was
no,
because that's other you find out.
He just knew Roman Polanski and said, I think it was for the it's wild.
Interesting to me that there's a level of fame where you you hear about people implicitly trust each other because, oh, you're also so rich and famous. Why would you fuck up my house or steal anything? I don't know you, but sure, Tom Cruise, you can stay at my mansion because you'll be in the area and I'm not there.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know. It's such a weird reason to trust someone. They're in the same class as you.
Yeah.
But you don't know them at all.
Yeah, it's wild.
That's how your teacher apartment hosted the death of Jimi Hendrix, right?
Jimi Hendrix.
He was just like, you can stay there. Sure. I don't know you.
Which is a weird pull, but either he was lying. I don't think he was lying. I think it was on a Wikipedia page at one point, but he was like, Godard and Jimi Hendrix were hanging out, and Jimi Hendrix OD'd at.
Godard was playing guitar solos. Jimmy was like, being very patronizing.
Yeah, exactly. He was like,
"Oh no,
that's
good,
this.
Godard. You're doing great, buddy."
But in any case, I think it's culturally relevant, and it's like it is an important film because of what you just said about Hereditary. There was a quote that was going around a few years ago from John Carpenter. Well, it was more of a conversation where they asked about how the 2010s and into the 2020s. John Carpenter, what do you think has happened recently with horror? We have elevated horror seems to be a genre that is like really taken fire. And his response to that is, what the fuck is elevated horror? And I point to this film every time I, think of that quote, just because you're right. So many Don't Look Now, like the 70s were rife with this kind of anxiety about child rearing and about just like, are we living we are as a generation are kind of fucked, right? And because there's this confidence that came from like the generations in the 50s and earlier, where it's just like, you just do this and you nose to the grind kind of thing. And there were the free love kind of atmosphere, and they saw that and witnessed it and were, trailblazers. And so there's this great amount of anxiety in dramas in the 70s that we still haven't gotten back to until I think recently now. Like if I had a thesis right now about like how this movie kind of folds into, the movie history. We are in a time right now, I think, that is much like the time that Rosemary's Baby was made, the early 70s as well. It's just crazy.
Except that rapists never get away with it anymore, thanks to the precogs. I want just in a nutshell, for people who don't want to watch it or don't know, it's pretty straightforward, and it will remind you of Hereditary if you know that movie. But yeah, just long story short, and speaking to the symbolism that Abe's discussing, it's about a guy who, for the sake of his Hollywood commercial career, I think is the important comment or message or whatever, makes a deal with a Satan worshiping cult to drug his wife and let her get physically raped by Satan, and give birth to a demon baby, that somehow, and they're like, but she'll live and you can have more babies after. Like, he just needs a way to get into the world, and then we'll just be a happy cult and fuck off, and you'll magically be a famous actor or whatever. And it's, the horror of the wife slowly realizing, oh, this cult is after us. Oh, my husband's in on it. Oh, the baby inside my very stomach is poison. And dealing with, that's a good horror. It just gets worse and worse.
Yeah.
But it's straightforward, and it has the similarity to Hereditary is not just the like summoning through birth, but like, I did not know the banger trope, which scans very modern to me, of old people naked in the dark where you can only kind of see their faces and their genitals, and it's all shadowy, just like muttering.
Eyes Wide Shut
is so this movie. And like, I thought Eyes
Yep.
Wide Shut kind of invented it, and Ari Aster like brilliantly repurposed it for horror.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm like, no, I guess we've always known old naked people are creepy. But you keep remembering it's from the landscape, but I'm like, really evocative lighting, very creepy. But onto your Carpenter thing, I think storytellers have always done that. Like, zombies, of course, are metaphors for things. Vampires are metaphors for things, and were even when they were just books and movies didn't exist. But I do think it has to be said, like, things become more sophisticated over time. And what Carpenter, I do think, is maybe glossing over, minimizing, or is like, and I do put it almost all on Jordan Peele, is like, Jordan Peele is a horror storyteller of historical import who sort of popularized a new level of complexity we're allowed to do, where he's like, it was like, zombies are mindless capitalism. He's like, Get Out is this specific kind of entitled center-left racism that's actually not helping the cause. And through the specific references, you're going to get a full essay about what I think about that.
It's a more defined argument.
Zombie movies did not do like, oh, the cheerleader zombie represents this portion of society. No, it was just a metaphor.
It's like they're gay, It's like Star Trek.
Jordan Peele did the YouTubeification, which is like everything means something. You can look into the notes. I brought the receipts. This is all connected, very postmodern.
It's of a different beast too, because something I was surprised by this watch around was the like Mia Farrow, fucking John Cassavetes kill it in this. And one of the things about this era was that it was coming off the tail of like early 60s, late 50s, and before, really. Like the MGM, the studio, where there was just a way in which things were shot. Hitchcock was kind of the final nail in the coffin, so to speak. And he was, amazing as well. But like, he was doing that. He was still mimicking like the Gone with the Wind and stuff, really. This is, this is the American New Wave. This is how they teach this film in film school. They go, all right, Rosemary's Baby and everything after was New Hollywood is what they called it, which is hilarious because New Hollywood has been coined like 800 times since. But like, this was called the American New Wave.
Sort of the tropes we associate with mainstream American horror.
Yeah, and it had a lot of things going on. It was stealing from a lot of things. It was like this kind of punk sentiment, but also not really punk like fuck it all, but kind of like why can't we be handheld? And also this is why I look to our generation as very like theirs, is that handheld cameras were a thing now. They weren't before. The cameras were these huge hunking pieces of metal that you could barely move. And now it's just like a guy can run around with it and that's your movie. And so all these things kind of, led them to like cinema verite and like all that stuff where it's like fly on the wall documentary style. And it's got this punk kind of aesthetic, and it just jump started this way in which things were cut. Like, you notice how like this movie is in love with abruptly cutting at the end of like a line out of a scene. Yeah. Like that wasn't done as much before. I mean, Godard had done that and stuff like that, but this was like, yep, it's here. And this is like the new edit aesthetic.
Oh, and he did the smash cut to something mundane as a jump scare, meaning there's a particular one where they smash cut to an intersection and the traffic guard is already mid blowing their whistle as hard as they can. So like on the cut, it's suddenly,
which feels like, to us
very modern,
simplistic. So to bounce off your Get Out comment, which I agree with, because it's now the argument has become kind of the focus. This was more about, we never see real people in movies. And so Polanski and, Kubrick and like this new, guard that was coming in at this time, and Cassavetes, he was kind of the jumpstart because he's a filmmaker on his own. He's famous for A Woman Under the Influence.
For which one? Like can you give a little? I hear the name all the time,
Cassavetes?
and I'm always like, "What's his deal? Is he just an actor, or he made movies?"
Yeah, he's an actor, and he was also an independent filmmaker, director. Okay. Most famous for like A Woman Under the Influence with Gina Rollins' amazing performance. If you haven't seen it, go watch A Woman Under the Influence. It's like film 101 in terms of like I have never seen anything like this before. Faces, The Killing of a Chinese Bookie, opening night. He was famous for bringing this kind of like aesthetic or the style that I've kind of been talking about, where it's like he worked with a stable of actors, kind of anti-studio. He went for like type. He did, or studio goes for type. He went for like people, and he constantly worked with like Gina Rollins and Peter Falk and Ben Gazzara, Seymour Cassel. And he was known for hating the method, right? Like he felt that acting should come from joy and familiarity and developing a deep trusting relationship between actors, not like this singular Brando performance by a genius.
Or I'm going to make myself go crazy till I really am the Joker. You don't have to do that, Joker, man. Baby. You can just imagine shit.
And and I love him because he also his rehearsals where he would invite he was very Italian, get all his actors, they would have a day-long rehearsal where they just eat and he'd make a meal and it would be this potluck and they would read lines and they would just listen to music, and it was very much that free love attitude.
You fucking my wife.
We fucking my wife. So Cassavetes was that, and he was an actor in this and several other things. But Roman Polanski was a part
thanks to the deal he made with Satan, he became a famous actor.
With the Satan.
Satan.
And so like that's what his deal is, and I think that they were really focused on at this time shucking the studio's kind of rigidity about how stories are told. And he's like, why can't it just be like a simple moment of someone like pulling at their thread in their sweater? That's the scene. And it's like, yeah, it's metaphorical, but it's mostly just like how they do it and how the actor behaves. And it's compelling. It's really compelling. And we don't see, I would argue, or the reason I mention it, you don't see a lot of that anymore. Ari Aster's kind of calling back to it, but I think that the Get Out, for as brilliant as it is, there's only a few arguments. No, I'll take that back. It's like we focused on the arguments so much that we kind of lost this little tiny behavioral science that happens in movies from the 70s.
Like, I thought Nope did a better job specifically with, we spent more time with the incident where the monkey goes wild and kills everyone on the set of the sitcom. More time was spent on that than structurally made sense intentionally, and it felt like a vibes choice and a sort of psychology choice. But Get Out is straight up like a YouTube essay as a film in a way that I love. But
for sure,
yeah, in an interesting way as well. I also wanted to mention another Harlan Ellison short story that if people like Rosemary's Baby or don't want to support Roman Polanski, search out the one about Kitty Genovese. If you don't know, it's a famous viral news story from the 70s where a woman got stabbed 70 to 90, some absurd number of times in public in broad daylight, in sight of many, many windows. And though apocryphal, this sort of news bite that became viral was that everyone saw and no one called the cops because everyone assumed someone else would call the cops. It's none of my business.
Right.
And that is an effect that is deleterious, and it's called the bystander effect. In that case, sort of, we dug in and learned a lot about that. But it's still a simplification of the event, meaning, if you dig into it, it's not like no one gave a shit or no one called, but like it's not that clean. But nevertheless, it was like a huge hit news tragedy that year. And there's a famous song called Small Circle of Friends I highly recommend. That's a very funny like folk song that's like, I guess it's fine, we'll all just watch each other die. You know what I mean? Like mocking how society's cooked. And there's also a great Harlan Ellison short story, very similar vibes to this movie, about people who move into an apartment complex and they think that their neighbors are swingers, but you, the audience, are like, no, your neighbors are ensorceling you into Satanism. Yes. You don't see? They're stealing your souls.
I mean, they didn't know it was that until late in the movie. Rosemary like starts, there's a conspiracy, and then it leads to, what is this, Satanism?
One of the clues, by the way,
Satanism.
Very 70s, is that she's like, it zooms in a horror zoom on his earlobe. And she's like, wait, but he's a man and has pierced ears. Satanism. Like,
Yeah,
it's one of those. He could
That's
be gay.
weird.
He could worship Satan. There's only a couple reasons for a man to have pierced ears.
Well, I mean, he is an old man at that time. That's bizarre.
I just think it's amazing how times change, man.
Yeah, they would get the ick, as they say. Yeah. And here's the thing. Talk about character studies and like how they treat the Cassavetes. I think, was that their name?
Yeah, the Cassavetes, which is confusing
because Cassavetes. But
the creepy old couple are the Cassavetes.
Creepy old couple. I would say if this was modern, from jump, they would be creepy. Like, look at like how Shyamalan did his movies, you know, even like The Visit and stuff like that is another one. But like, just like pick any horror, and with the exception of maybe like something like The Gift, The Guest.
What Lies Beneath?
No, yes.
Well, I'm saying movies where intentionally the twist is you're never gonna guess who it is. It's the guy you thought was good. That's right. Our twist.
So those are tied to like a twist, and this doesn't play it as a twist.
No,
the idea is that the idea is that we would just show, look at these monsters from jump. Mm-hmm. This movie sets up the villain so beautifully. Actually, I think the writing is incredible with the older couple in this like Act 1.
Oh, and I love how light-handed it is. Like when you look back, just like this really reminded me of Hereditary's script as well.
Yeah.
It all seems like a bunch of chaotic, evil nonsense is happening. But if you look back with a careful eye, you can actually understand in detail the rules of, they need an object and then they put the thing in the ball and they have to put the ball on your neck and then you fall asleep and this can happen. And just like Hereditary, if you look into it, all the Satanist shit had rules. And I thought that was very cool.
Yeah, there's definitely rules. It's so funny. By the end of this movie, spoilers, it's just a bunch of old people yelling, "Hail Satan!
Hail Satan! Hail
and
Satan!"
That's, I mean, it doesn't forgive Roman Polanski, that's for sure, but it is awesome. But I do think that they're, like, them as a couple, I was almost like, I know this is like a stereotype, but at the same time, I was like, this is so endearing. You know, it's like, Roman's my hubby. Oh, what's this chair? You got mail. What is it? Ads. You know, it's just like, she is just a mile a minute. She's like tooting her own horn. It's fantastic.
And also she's giving Lucille Ball energy.
Yeah.
Very calculatedly, the last energy you would ever think. You're like, well, she's not a witch. She just doesn't read... Witch.
She's just a nosy neighbor who's
sucking
lonely.
Satan's dick in the closet, dude. She's evil.
Yeah. And like, he's the same way. He's like, name a place. I've been there. He says that like 4 times in the movie. It's just like, okay, I guess. And then you realize, so he's probably gone to like where Satanists are. I don't know where they are on
because
the globe,
it turns out he leads the cult and it's a global cult. So you imagine, he was low key revealing that he's been a man about like a globetrotter his whole life. And there's all these things where you're like, in retrospect, they were kind of saying like, yeah, I'm a big wheel down at the cracker factory. Yeah, I have a lot of people who report to me. And you're like, all these things build up to, he was always saying, yeah, I run a giant Satan cult.
Right.
Like, he just was sharing tiny facets of it.
Yeah. And it's rarely do we get a movie where it's like, let's show the charm of the cult or how you can fall for it. Mm. You know, like you in the audience, person who is quote unquote normal or thinks or presumes themselves to be, you too could fall for this.
Well,
like that's a tough thing to do.
What's great about that slow boil that we never do anymore because the hook has to hit is the first half of the movie can be read. I'm sure the trailers and Scuttlebutt made people know that something supernatural was probably going to in the cards, but you theoretically are just dealing with actual pregnancy horror, meaning, like you said, you're not having dread that the husband seems off. He doesn't seem off. And you're not having dread that the neighbors seem off. They don't seem off. You're having dread that she's 3 months pregnant and she's losing weight. Like normal things that pregnant women actually fear, or like she's having weird cravings, or she seems to have mommy brain to a disturbing degree. And I love that they allowed themselves to, like, you know, compared to Alien, equally effective, amazing movie that's about the horror of pregnancy, but in such an abstract way You know, because a thing shoots a thing into you and then it comes out of your belly.
And bursts out of you.
Then, of course, famously, many people see Alien and then you go, it's a rape metaphor. It penetrates your womb. And people are like, I didn't even think of that. Rosemary's Baby is not like that. They're like, this is pregnancy horror, which is horrific enough just as it is. The fear that your baby might die, that it's not growing right, that something's wrong with it. What are you doing wrong? Why is the baby not thriving? And then it's just icing on the cake that they're like, well, it's because it's Satan. Like, no.
See, there's this root, and so John Cassavetes was under a spell, and so was she, and
And it still has that stuff. I do love the mishmash of stuff that we would never let slide in terms of clunkiness now. Like when Satan is raping her. I don't mean to laugh. It's a really disturbing. Well, remind me of Hitchcock when Hitchcock collaborated with Dolly, like those dream sequences, really surreal, good dream sequences when she's drugged.
For you.
Yeah, Polanski nails it.
Yeah, that's
very Hereditary feeling kind of vibes. But at the end, I guess so the audience can tell her, I don't know, as she's getting impregnated by Satan, she goes, this isn't a dream at all. This is really happening. Like, all right,
it's pretty on the nose.
Okay, dude.
Well, it's because I think audiences hadn't seen this kind of thing on the mainstream.
I bet audiences were going, wait, is this really happening? Is that truly the offer?
Right.
Is Satan raping her? And the movie has to be like, yeah, that's what we're fucking telling you, bro.
Like their marketed audience may have been alive for Gone with the Wind,
where the guy said damn and everyone was like, oh shit, you can say damn now.
I do like the idea of like a very old man watching Rosemary's Baby and being like, movies have really advanced a lot. I'm glad that they told me that was Satan.
A grandma who's like, I haven't seen a movie since Gone with the Wind. I mean, he said damn, but at least overall it was for God and country. And you're like, see this, grandma? I did not care for that.
Or what if she loves it? She's like, this is the real shit. Yeah. Fucking grandma's awful.
And I think it is. That's part of what's creepy is it seems way ahead of its time in giving offers like this cheery old man who comes off as like the non-threatening version of Batman's Penguin from the 60s cartoon show. You're going to see laughably. His dick. He's going to scream, Hail Satan, like shit that you have not seen from an actor like this before. This is even, you've seen Marty, but this is not Ernest Borgnine, like being a little self-effacing. This is a cheerful old man screaming, Hail Satan.
Yeah.
In naked. It's pretty in your face for the time, man.
And early 68.
Also, it does. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, I was just like putting in context, like you look at something that's like known for its like abashed, like shockiness, and it's like Bad Lieutenant or something like that, or Bad Santa, and it's like, motherfucker, this is 1968.
Not even the 70s. 68.
It's not even the 70s yet. This shit is going for it. And it was a huge movie.
Case in point.
Huge.
And this is how hypocritical and like punitive society was at this time.
Right.
This speaks even more to it. So not the neighbor lady, but her best friend, who becomes like the featured minion, the minion with the most screen time, was like a Zero Mostel type actor, meaning she had a big career, then she got blackballed, and then towards the end of her life she came back. But in her case, it wasn't communism. It was because she admitted to fucking Tallulah Bankhead and being a lesbian and would not deny being a lesbian. Everyone was like, no, we like you. Let us please give you a career, but you just have to say you're not a lesbian. And she was repeatedly like, no, also, I fuck the most famous, hottest chicks in town, bitch. And they're like, okay, then we have to blackball you. And then finally by 1968, she was getting small roles and stuff again.
Right.
And I just so imagine that this movie is coming out. Like, imagine being her and working on this and being like, so I can't admit that I'm a lesbian, but let's shoot this Satan rape scene like right now, I guess. Like, society's so out of whack in that regard. My God.
So I misspoke. It's even 1 year earlier, 1967. And the reason 68 was in my head, because a fascinating fact is that, and I would argue that culturally, this movie probably caused a little bit of this, because it had been going downhill at this point, like in the mid 60s already. But the year that the Hays Code ended In other words, the TV and like the before what was the MPAA, you know, just the idea of like, you can't say this, you can't say shit or fuck, or, you know, that ended in a year after this film. So it's almost like this film came out and was like, fuck your fucking Hays Code. And no one gave a shit. No one enforced the law. And everyone's like, yeah, that Hays Code shit, get rid of it. That movie was dope. You know, like that's where culturally we were at that time.
And like, I totally give crazy. Exorcist all those flowers. And I think some spare some for the grave of Rosemary's Baby, which also, of course, I think the correct ending, the truly disturbing horror ending, which is she approaches the baby and they totally build you up for the, speaking of Exorcist, oh, she's going to somehow kill the baby as hard as that is. She's gonna now she finally recognizes that ain't your baby. Nope. She goes, okay, I'll take care of the baby and join the cult. I just don't want to lose my baby. And you're like, no.
I also love, we never see the baby. And there's one haunting line.
Yeah.
One haunting line, which is a great line.
What did you do to his eyes?
What did you do to his eyes?
Yeah.
That's so chilling.
The implication, of course, being nothing. His eyes just look like that. And you're like,
he's
what
got
the?
Satan eyes is how I read it. It's like he's got goat eyes or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like that, talk about a line that
they're like, oh, we gave him cute little
glasses.
glasses. You don't like them? And she's like, oh, those are cute.
Dude, you have an opportunity to do a recut of Rosemary's Baby and use Sonny.
He's got the little Kanye harder, better, faster, stronger glasses that are just like plastic bars.
Jesus. Yeah.
What did you do to his eyes? I'll tell you, I still haven't gotten my shit together to do it, but I really want to do a TikTok that intercuts the Mystic River scene where he screams, "Is that my daughter in there?" And I want to dress as his daughter and be in a little box and be screaming, "Is that my dad out there? Are you there, Dad? Is that my dad out?" But now that I've said it, I don't have to do it.
You did it. You did it right here.
I did it just now.
Yeah, my Halloween costume that's Mystic River related is I wanted to just walk around with a Mystic Pizza t-shirt on and just ask where my pizza is. That my pizza over there?
My pizza over there. That would come up a lot of Halloween parties too. That'd be great. And then, dude, we could do a group costume where I will occasionally just come in, shiv you, and then be like, "Oh, I guess he didn't do it."
Yeah,
you know?
I guess he didn't.
I forgive him. It was his pizza in there.
Let's do it.
Anyway, yeah, definitely Rosemary's Baby. Oh, I also want to say, well, no, I don't want to say that. Never mind. I don't want to say that.
Okay, cool.
I was going to say this. I'll say the context, but I don't think I'll reveal the thing, which is that this was disturbing enough to remind me of one of my most disturbing childhood core memories that I hadn't thought of in a decade and unlocked.
Yeah, that would
which is I came across some pornography that I now,
it
all came flooding back. Like now I remember the name and I could tell people it and they could go look it up. But it's some Italian porn comic about Satan raping a bunch of nuns. And I saw it when I was like 13 or whatever. And it fucked me. I was like, it was like the first time I was like I was starting to be horny already. But I didn't realize, sex can be scary and horrible and like mean and full of pain. That had not occurred to me. You know what I mean?
That's the way some people do it.
Convent of Hell. Look it up.
Oh, yeah.
Start your fapping.
Some perv is like just like pumping their fists.
I think that might be the most, like for my money, I was thinking back on it after watching this. I was like, I think that's the most damaging thing I got the youngest. You know what I mean? Like I saw RoboCop, but RoboCop's not as damaging as Convent of Hell. So I think this was my most damaging poisonous media.
I wish I had a story like that. My investigation in the foray of sex was more vanilla than yours. I just found some like nudie playing cards in my dad's like that's I never used that.
This was for sale at the local comic book shop. I just picked it up from the area you're not supposed to be able to buy comics from, and the guy sold it to me. You know what I mean? And then I was like, I'm in over my head.
Yeah, Satan will do that to you.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, and he's like a giant goat monster in that. He is not a man with a beard.
You know, I see it. I see how it influenced you.
I hail him. Also, they do when is Shining the book? Do you know when the book The Shining came out?
Oh,
or also / is Red Rum, the Red Rum scene from the book, or did Kubrick invent that? I guess what I'm getting at is they do a straight up Red Rum scene in this. I wonder who thought of it first, but she just throws random Scrabble.
77.
She throws random Scrabble letters out and they form like
Yes,
Death Baby.
She does
or
the anagram
Satan.
to
I
find.
forget what it even spells, but
Right,
something
she
evil.
does, I am Voldemort
I'm
is what it
Voldemort,
says.
yeah.
No.
Oh, no.
It's 10 years after this movie was the writing of Shining came out in
Then
77.
I think that's a pretty cool offer for 1967. Yeah.
Yeah.
Also,
early.
other really audacious offers for the time. The way we start to suspect something's wrong is like her pregnancy cravings are blood and raw meat, and she starts wasting away instead of fattening up. Very creepy.
Which, again, it feels like something you've seen 1,000 times at this
Since
point,
then.
right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. It's like, no, that's
reminding
just
me of Long
stuff.
Legs at different parts. The Cursed Necklace.
Yeah, no,
specifically.
absolutely.
Yeah.
That's why I think the elevated horror genre, how we kind of talk about that, it's pretty. I don't know. I'm an old man yelling at clouds when I'm like, learn your movie history, fuckers. Let's talk about this in a way that actually makes sense.
My favorite thing about the concept of old man yelling at clouds is very, very soon the common answer will be, what's that from? And you'll be like, Simpsons. They'll be like, what's that?
What's that?
And you'll be like,
and everyone's
old man
be
disintegrating away.
Yeah.
Now I
old
am the
man's
clouds.
references. Sad.
yeah. Also, really great soundscape and sound editing all throughout in incredibly detail-oriented, subtle ways that, of course, has become, I think, all horror buffs now know. Like, it's a common horror buff thing to say, sound is especially important in that genre, and it is. Like, they have 8 different varieties of softly ticking clock in this movie, and each one is used for a different sort of tension pace for a different scene. Like, you're in a close-up on something you're dreading, so you get the soft ticking of a wristwatch, or you're in a hospital room in a wider static shot wondering if someone's going to live through the night, so you get the click, click, click of a wall clock. Like that's pretty modern sensibility
repetition.
Shit.
Yeah. A lot of mainstays in terms of like psychological horror sound design. Yeah, speaking of like the other disciplines, so it's not a well-known name anymore, but fucking the cinematographer William Fraker fucking nails it, dude. He is so good. He's done a bunch of movies that you probably haven't heard of, but he got a shit ton of awards in this era. And he's really good at what he does. For example, did you realize like it is seamless that it's all set. It's all one set. Like,
oh, it's just their apartment building?
Their apartment is built. And it's so good. Like, it does not, it looks like a lived in location,
dude,
right?
I don't know if this has been done before or since, but you're like this. Therefore, this would make an incredible play. Like, to wit, I'm now thinking of it as a play, and I'm like, that would be a kick-ass theater experience.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not only, but it's just like the absolute craftsmanship. Like, so not really Roman Polanski. I mean, like I want to give credit to the people who made this happen. The production design, the cinematography. Like, I don't. There's only like one shot I think I even noticed that it's a set, and it's just because there's a window and it like, it's not even looks bad. It's just like it's a highlight. It's very clearly they're just bouncing like a light into a bounce board, and it's just highlighted to shit. But so you would see things like you'd see, but this was shot in LA on a sound studio, and most of it's in like basically their apartment, and it's looks so lived in. It looks so like beautiful and evocative of the time. I mean, it's obviously the 1960s decor and style, but it just like feels like a space in a way that I can't think of. Maybe Parasite, not even Parasite, because we have this like modern kind of affinity for like brutalism, and everything is like either minimalist or like clean and sleek and Apple-ad. Like that's the kind of shit that we think of as like, this is like a very sleek kind of thing. And like looking back at this film, I'm just like, I want to live in this fucking house. And it's like Renaissance revival type house, you know what I mean? But like watch that stuff and it just blows me away every time I see these shots, that the fact that it's all just crafted
and
out of nothing.
That now makes total sense, because as is correct for horror and the topic of Satan slowly corrupting your life around you, and a reason to do it on a set, is
Right.
the painterly play of light and shadow in this film is also masterful. Really, really controlled lighting and meaningful lighting as well as composition. The shot that I like copy and pasted was the doctor standing so that you just see like his vest and watch, like and his belt buckle, meaning like the things that represent his masculine power over
and
her.
it just holds on her,
and it's holding on her seated on the bed, barely lit, so you can just see her eye light. So you're just there with her and her feelings, and her feeling is devastated. And you see John Cassavetes is the husband in the background in a full body like cowboy shot where you can see most of his body. He's half in the light, half in the darkness with his head down like he feels guilty. In retrospect, this is the scene right after he just agreed to sell his wife to the devil. Yeah. And when the doctor leans into frame to reveal his face, it reveals that he's not the doctor that you were happy that she had. He's the bad doctor that is compromised by the cult. Yeah, the bad doctor Abe is the doctor who's come to visit. And you're like, oh no, it's him. Great shot.
Fucking great. Yeah, use it. Like it almost smacks of Kurosawa in terms of like the blocking of how that unfolds, like high and low or whatnot. How about that phone booth shot, man? What a performance by Farrow.
And where she just pretends to talk so she can get.
She just pretends to talk because a lady's like coming up to phone booths. Man, like I don't think I've ever even used a phone booth really, but like I love how that's like a public but private space. It's like endlessly interesting to me. Like we had these little cages that you could go and be alone.
Do I have a Colin Farrell movie for you, my friend? We'll talk after.
Yeah, just this little coffin. How about a Ryan Reynolds movie?
No, well, I don't know if you've seen it. It's in Bruges. It's this place where they have phone booths.
it's this coffin-esque
country
town
that no one wants to be in. It's old-fashioned, yeah.
But yeah, like the phone booth shot, it's all one long take, and this lady in a pink dress comes up to like, she wants to take the phone, and so she acts like she's not, and then it dollies down, or it like tilts down, or booms down, and reveals guy arriving and like basically acting as a sentry. And when she the shot ends because she takes one look at the guy and she's basically assured that her thought about the conspiracy is completely well-founded, and she's just floored. She's just like, I am alone. And they're just out. I have this little part of private space. It's a phone booth size privacy, and not even that can stand against this, like these Satanists who are, or she's totally making it up. That's the other thing, is like she just feels that way, and you really do feel it. It's all Farrow just fucking high-fiving a bunch of angels.
And it must be said that Mia, incredible performance from Mia Farrow, who also famously, if people know about her life, was married to Frank Sinatra and later married to Woody Allen and accused Woody Allen of abuse. And he, in turn, and their adopted daughter, who he's now coupled with, accused her of gaslighting and abuse. So, like, I think it's poignantly heartbreaking and notable that the actor portraying this character is no stranger to fucked up male-female power dynamics. What does it mean to be a woman? And just the way society boxes you. Like, I'm sure she had plenty to work with, and you can see it. She does great.
Right. It's historically, I maybe argue relevant, but at the very least, just you can see how the moments through time kind of alter the politics of both like wide society and how people reacted to both movies and also the people who were working on these movies, people like Polanski, people like Farrow. And you go, okay, so that's like clearly a reaction to that, like, cause then you think about Ronan Farrow, like, and you think about like what he like, so he became an investigative journalist. Oh, that makes sense. That makes a ton of sense, because he was looking for clarity of what the truth is, because he was clearly in a household where two people
tried to convince you, no, mommy's right, no, daddy's right.
There was a gaslighting.
Please choose me. Seems to be the vibe.
Yeah. And it's just wild to me that, and it's on display.
It wild me to think that, Polanski might have said on the set of this, like, so really try to, like, have you ever known a guy that, like, seemed great, seemed perfect, and then he like suddenly fucked you over, and it turned out he was shit? And it's like, yeah, I think I can handle that. I can, from her point of view, I just am like,
I don't
I'm
think
sure she's
at
got
this
that.
point yet.
Yeah.
But it's almost like relevant at the
later in life. Who knows what she was at?
Movie,
well,
was
I
like,
can't
holy
imagine
shit.
Frank Sinatra was an incredible husband either, but I am making more assumptions there. I know more about Woody Allen.
Yeah, I mean, he was a hound dog, wasn't he?
I'm sure he was unfaithful, but I don't know
if
if he was like a huge.
Yeah,
I don't know if he's a creep. I think we have all come to learn Woody Allen makes us uncomfortable.
All those big band, guys, they're all like, they're monsters.
He's a monster.
We have to assume they're monsters. There's monsters coming out of the woodworks in the modern age who we thought were like totally fine. He's like openly like, yeah, I don't care. I'll slap a woman. It's that
Sean
kind of
Connery,
shit, that
dude.
era.
Said to
Sean
Barbara
Connery,
Walters,
dude.
sometimes a woman needs a slap.
Yep, and he voted sexiest man alive.
And then when Marvel became dominant, he said, give me one of these fucking things. I want to stay famous. And they're like, how about this, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen? He's like, fine, I'll do it. Yeah. And then that came out and it bombed. And he's like, I don't know what people fucking want. I quit. And he quit his job.
Quit. I'm fucking James Bond.
Love Sean Connery. What a joke.
Sean Connery is a hilarious
what a talented
specimen
jerk.
of history. Yeah. We literally called him an extraordinary gentleman. Sometimes you got to give him a shot.
Like a gentleman.
It's just bizarre.
It's
bizarre what we do to celebrities. Yeah, it's absolutely bizarre. But this was a box office success.
So cost effective. By the way, Satan is just gorilla arms. Like when that intrude into frame at one point.
Oh yeah, it's just fingers,
claws and furry arms.
Titties.
So cost effective, this movie, man. Yeah.
Yeah. It's because it kind of had to, and
I bet it was
it's
hugely
crazy
profitable.
Because people
then.
look at it. Well, here's the thing: like box office at the time, it made like $8 million. It was made for like $3 million.
$5 million
at
profit,
this time.
Dude.
That was like
I'd take it.
I mean, it's since gotten more because of Criterion sales and all that stuff. So box office is always inflated for every movies. And I think on Wikipedia it says 33 million. But like, if you came out with a movie and in its initial run made $8 million, you have just created a certifiable banger. That is the kind of movies we were making. Think about that for a second. Think about the budgets we talk about like, what was that?
Well, because you're not, Rosemary's Baby was not an indie movie. It was a AAA released by Roman Polanski. It wasn't a
blockbuster.
Right, so
yeah, no, it was.
You're not saying no movie exists anymore
movie.
for a $10 million budget range, but this was like,
yeah,
hey, the new Avengers came out. Dang, it did good. It made $12 million. Like, wow, dude.
Yeah,
wow,
exactly.
all right.
It's like,
I'm gonna go buy a cow for a nickel or whatever, get a cup of coffee.
Yeah, this was gangbusters at the time. It's just really funny to me that it's just like the scale of the commoditization of how we perceive the success of cinema via box office is absolutely warped by our modern times, to the point that we go like, this
it's happening
nothing.
in gaming too.
Like,
there's been a lot of interesting game industry articles about, like, how scientists will sometimes figure out, well, a bug could only ever be this big because mathematically its exoskeleton would have to get too heavy to fly to support the weight of whatever.
Right.
There's like ceilings on how things can be. They're starting to do that with they're like, if the next Call of Duty game costs $650 million to make, there's the human, there's not enough people to make it profitable enough to have been worth doing it. So we're reaching that point with media now.
But some producers like, but what if it does?
Because their secret is, that's the only idea I have. I don't have any other ideas.
That's why we get 4-quadrant risk adverse nonsense.
Only way to go is bigger.
Yada yada yada.
How can we top this next year?
Yeah.
He'll jump over more flaming cars than last year.
But this was fighting above its weight, right?
Totally.
This was a kind of squeaky, independent, but slightly not studio, but had some money behind it. I mean, 3 million in 68 or 67 was nothing to, look at and
sneeze,
whatever the saying is.
Also, you very much made me want to watch Killing of a Chinese Bookie and A Woman Under the Influence. So we'll probably watch one of those at our movie
Woman
night.
Under the Influence, just for Gina Rollins' performance, it's singular, and you're gonna see it, and you're gonna go, oh, that's where all these people later got that. Not just that shot, but just the way in which she interacts with the world is just so
Interesting.
captivating. I won't spoil it for people because this is not a podcast on the Cassavetes. But Cassavetes, really interesting guy. Fantastic
I hear him mentioned
artist.
with great reverence by people who deeply study film. So I just never got into it.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of some of his films. It's obviously an art history exercise or a film history exercise, but you know, if you like older films and you haven't seen some of those, like Faces, holy shit, go back to his earliest and it's like Shadows, and it's like you're watching, oh, this is like before all that shit happened. This is like, it's like watching Breathless or something like that. You're just like, okay, this is so early that like we're talking about a film grammar that audiences had no exposure to. It was the equivalency of, in that, you know, you hear that example of like the first time that we showed a train coming at, you know, like camera, people jumped out of the way. It's like, it's that kind of fundamental where it's just like, oh, people hadn't had or seen that lexicon of images thrown at them. What is it going to do? And that's, I wish I was making films for audiences back then. What is it that Hitchcock said? He's like, I hate to make movies in 100 years because they know all my tricks. It's that kind of stuff. And this movie is a wonderful smorgasbord of tricks by a monster and other great people, or, you know, better people who didn't do all these terrible things. So
like besmirch Woody
that's kind of
Allen.
my balanced
Yeah.
take. Yeah, I don't know. Some people may be like, why did you even do this episode?
Well, you can
And that's
blame me
fair.
because I picked it without knowing who directed it.
There it is.
Speaking of art history, my son just made shart history, so I have to wrap up and go change.
Hell yeah, dude. Be ungovernable.
Poop
Sonny.
ungovernably.
Poop constantly. Actually, no, because that would probably be a risk to health. You can't
Who's
wait
out?
some.
The fat cats up in Washington.
Wait a few years and then poop constantly.
Yeah.
Well, I wish you best, man.
I
Don't
wish you best.
hail Satan is what I have to say to you right now.
Me or the listener?
Because you have a baby.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Listener, do what you need to do. Vis-a-vis.
I hope the
Satan.
next thing that you do is walk to wherever Jen is and go, what did you do to his eyes?
Ooh, okay. I'll report back. See how that goes.
That's gonna be horrible.
I mean, it's gonna go as disappointingly as possible, which is they'll go, "What do you mean?" And I'll go, "That's
What do you
not
mean?
funny. You're not helping me out at all."
I did a terrible trick. It was the worst prank. I'm a terrible prankster.
Patreon.com/smallbeans.
It's good to talk to you, buddy.
Good to talk to you, bud.